Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. This is Representative Dan Miller. I appreciate you again stopping in for us with us over your lunchtime. I know a bunch of you are watching it over lunch, which is great. Some of you watch this later, which is also fine. Don't forget the entirety of our Medicaid and SNAP program with a little bit of our education as well. Discussion in August is available on repdanmiller.com, so you can go back at any point, watch this if you missed more of it, or follow any of the other, I think roughly six that we have, five others that we have. You could see them on Rep Dan Miller. There's a couple that's already there, and probably within 2 weeks it'll all be there. So don't forget that that is there. So thank you for joining us. Look, today we're going to be talking about SNAP and the Charitable Food Network and our concerns regarding federal changes in support of those efforts. And let's keep in mind, too, we've talked a little bit about SNAP before. These are obviously life-sustaining programs. And I'd like to tell you that there isn't a sizable population of Pennsylvanians who, whether it be more of a long-term or short-term basis, have needs for these services. But there is a sizable portion of Pennsylvania. We're going to go into that today as to how important these things are right here in Pennsylvania to be sure that, as best we can, food insecurity, at the very least, is combated. Right. So that's what we're trying to do here. That's why these programs are so important. And so we're going to know more about that today as well. So we have four presenters. So we don't have too much time. So I want to try and be sure to get everybody. Let me give the quick introduction before we start with our speakers. Ann Sanders is the Director of Public Benefits Policy and Programs at Just Harvest, a local organization dedicated to promoting a just system of food access by addressing the root causes of hunger, systemic poverty, and inequity through policy advocacy, grassroots organizing, community-based solutions, and connecting people to benefits. And thank you, Just Harvest has been a tremendous partner for us during this month in particular. We always appreciate you, your guys' work. Thank you for joining us. Also with us, number two, Stephen O'Brien. Stephen O'Brien is is the advocacy coordinator at the Greater Pittsburgh Community Food Bank. There he is. He works with elected officials and government agencies at all levels to strengthen laws, regulations, and policies that improve food security and address the root causes of hunger as well. Again, we are very glad to have Stephen here at the Greater Pittsburgh Food Bank. Is always a great resource. And I know that there's been continued unfortunate need in some regards for expansion that the state has continued to find ways to support as well. You guys are providing integral services. Thank you very much for being here. Hopefully, number three, we have Ebony Lunsford Evans. So Ebony had a little bit of a connection issue. Let me tell you about her, and hopefully we'll be seeing her in and out. Ebony is a wife, educator, and grower, as well as an established business owner. There she is. Hopefully we're going to keep seeing her. She loves farming, gardening, and playing in the dirt. She has also taught in Pittsburgh Public Schools District before becoming a full-time urban farmer, and she works with Farmer Girl Ebb LLC. I hope I got that right. So we're very glad to have Ebony. Again, she had a little bit of a connection issue, but I think we're going to keep her the whole time. So we're optimistic. Ebony, thank you for joining us. And finally, certainly not least, is Diane Shank from Dilamatos Market LLC. Diane has owned and operated the Market, a full-service grocery store in Hazelwood for 10 years with the mission to provide access to food, fresh, healthy food, as well as to be a positive space in the community and build wealth in the regional food system by sourcing local as much as possible. These are integral things here. We're very glad to have Diane join us. Thank you very much, Diane, and we look forward to hearing your expertise as to what concerns people may have. Our goal, of course, is to mitigate as much as possible people and systems of support not meeting demands. And the federal government is an essential partner for us in the state. It's going to be very challenging, if likely not impossible, for us to go forward if we find large-scale federal pushback or pullback. Let's hope that we never really do, but that's why we're here today. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ann. We're going to ask everybody, don't forget, we'll take a look at Q&A. That's a feature here too. No matter what, you could send my office questions, or if we don't get to them, we'll make sure that your questions get asked and answered by the experts, the four experts who we have here today. So don't forget that that's available to you as well. But Ann, thank you. I'll kick it over to you.
Thank you, Representative Miller. I appreciate everyone being here and taking time out. So I'm going to talk quickly about just an overview of what we've talked about in the previous sessions on the SNAP changes and broader community impacts. So we can just go to the next slide and I'll talk a little bit about who receives SNAP benefits. So as mentioned before, nearly 2 million people in Pennsylvania receive SNAP. That's about 1 in 7 people. That includes, and of the folks who get SNAP, 58% of those families include a child, lots of older adults, individuals with disabilities, and working families. And I just want to say that for every meal that the Charitable Food Network provides, SNAP provides 9. So it's a very large, important part, and is like our first line of defense against hunger. And we can go to the next slide. So SNAP supports Pennsylvania in lots of different ways. It allows folks to go to the grocery store to buy affordable, healthy, culturally appropriate foods. It improves our health outcomes for the region, lowers healthcare costs, over time, better earning potentials for folks who participate in SNAP as children, as well as improved education outcomes. And SNAP is also an economic driver. So last year it was $4.37 billion in food assistance that came to Pennsylvania through SNAP benefits. So usually when there's an economic downturn, Congress decides to expend SNAP benefits, and that's because it is an economic driver and supports our economy. We can go to the next slide. Okay, so very quickly, some of the changes that are happening with SNAP, there'll be changes to work reporting rules. In our region, we're going to see some of that start to kick in September 1st, so next week, where adults ages 18 to 54 without dependents will need to be working 20 hours a week or show that they have a disability or other exemption in order to maintain their SNAP benefits for longer than 3 months. And then in November, that group who will have to report that will expand to more older adults, as well as parents with kids ages 14 and older. And we can go to the next slide. Some other benefit changes that are coming up. There's going to be more paperwork around reporting heating and cooling costs. That may negatively impact renters who have heat included in their rent. Lots of immigrants who are here legally will no longer qualify. This will include refugees, folks who have asylee status. They'll be losing their benefits in November. And then we know that in the future, how benefits are calculated will be restricted just to the rate of inflation. They won't be taking into account food availability, how people prepare their foods, or things like that going forward. It will just be tied to inflation. And we can go to the next slide to go over some of the next changes. And there'll be also more costs to the state of Pennsylvania going forward. It'll be cutting the amount that the federal government will be providing for administrative costs, such as staffing and IT. That will be going down, which will likely cost Pennsylvania about $130 million a year. And there's also going to be a cost share requirement that will be starting in October of 2027, which even if it's at the lower 5% cost share rate, that would cost Pennsylvania $225 million a year. And if Pennsylvania is unable to pay that cost share, we would just lose the SNAP program entirely. So those are all of the changes that were enacted into law by Congress and by our current president this summer, and that will be rolling out over the next 2 years. Yeah, so I just wanted to remind everyone what we're talking about as we talk about how that's going to impact our community at large. And one of the things I do want to mention is we're talking about like 1 out of every 15 folks who get SNAP benefits who are likely to lose their benefits as a result of these changes. So it's a pretty big changes. With that, I'm going to kick it over to Stephen to talk about how this would likely impact our folks in the Charitable Food Network space.
Thank you, Anne. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Stephen O'Brien. I'm the Advocacy Coordinator at Greater Pittsburgh Community Food Bank. I first want to thank State Representative Miller and his staff for hosting these important conversations about the looming cuts to Medicaid and SNAP, and for the invitation to speak today. Um, so Greater Pittsburgh Community Food Bank provides food and resources to our neighbors in 11 county service area, including Allegheny, Armstrong, Beaver, Butler, Cambria, Fayette, Greene, Indiana, Lawrence, Somerset, and Washington counties, through more than 1,000 agencies, partners, and programs. Our goal is to provide person and community-centered support that centers the voices of our neighbors and partners. In order to understand the impact that the One Big Beautiful Bill Act will have on the charitable food system, it's important to understand the existing hunger crisis that's happening all across the Commonwealth. According to Feeding America's 2025 Map the Meal Gap report, more than 1.7 million Pennsylvanians, including 1 in 6 children, are food insecure. It estimates that almost 321,000 individuals in the food bank's 11 county service area are food insecure. That's slightly greater than the population of the city of Pittsburgh. And further, the rate of food insecurity has increased by 40% in just the last 2 years. That's equal to the populations of Lancaster, Harrisburg, Altoona, and Williamsport combined. However, these numbers alone fail to tell the whole story. The food bank is able to look at data from our direct programs and partner network while also listening to the voices of our neighbors with lived and living experience to better understand how food insecurity is impacting our community. The data are clear. In fiscal year 2025, the food bank and our partners distributed a record-breaking 47 million pounds of food, which combined with our SNAP outreach efforts and other programs is equivalent to more than 53 million meals. That is more food and food resources going to our neighbors last fiscal year than at any point during the pandemic. Our neighbors regularly tell staff and volunteers about the hard choices they would have had to face if it had not been for their local food pantry. Now, as the result of the new federal reconciliation law, the health and well-being of our most vulnerable neighbors, is under attack. As you heard just a bit ago from Ann, the new federal budget reconciliation law makes the largest cut to SNAP in the history of the program. Here in Pennsylvania, according to Feeding Pennsylvania, these cuts will eliminate 36 million meals from the tables of Pennsylvanians that rely on the program annually. In comparison, the entire Feeding Pennsylvania network of food banks and partners distributed 188 million meals last year. And furthermore, the lost economic activity will negatively impact nearly 50,000 farms, 10,000 grocers and food retailers, and other parts of the food system all across our 67 counties. We also know that when our neighbors lose access to critical programs like Medicaid, it becomes harder to cover the cost of basic needs and food insecurity rates grow. Simply put, Pennsylvania's charitable food network will be unable to meet the growing demand. Cutting SNAP and other federal nutrition programs does not address hunger. It only harms our communities and puts more of our neighbors at risk, making the existing food insecurity crisis worse. As we are preparing for increases in demand throughout our network, our mission at Greater Pittsburgh Community Food Bank remains unchanged, but meeting this challenge will require all of us. We're calling on our partners and supporters, including lawmakers in Harrisburg, to stand with us and the community to ensure that our neighbors have the food they need to lead healthy, fulfilling lives. We need your help to get more food to our shelves, more meals into our homes, and more support into the hands of people who need it the most. The next state budget is an opportunity to express our values, and by strengthening Pennsylvania's 2 cornerstone anti-hunger programs, the State Food Purchase Program and the Pennsylvania Agricultural Surplus System, we say that hunger has no place in our Commonwealth. Thank you again to Representative Miller and his staff for hosting this important conversation. And Ann, I will turn it back over to you to go to our next speaker.
Thanks, Stephen. Eb, would you like to share a little bit about how SNAP helps support your farm and the store?
Yeah, sure. I'm just sitting here. First of all, I just want to say thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here, and I'm really just taken aback as I just sit and just listen to this become real and real each day. As a previous SNAP recipient, I grew up on SNAP benefits, and I just remember growing up and still always being hungry. My mom did the best she could with what she had. But I do remember SNAP being crucial in our household. There was just called food stamps back then, and just crucial in our household just for us to be able to eat and survive. And but thank God that I've been able to go from being a SNAP recipient to a SNAP provider, and as an urban farmer and educator, and I also have a fresh food corner store located in the West End in Pittsburgh. And being one of the first females, urban farmers in Pittsburgh, to be able to open up a fresh food corner store in an area where food is limited has been a dream come true, not only for me, but amazing for the community. And just being able to go through all of the loops and things that it takes to become a SNAP provider, it took me a lot to be able to become a SNAP provider. And I've watched the people in my community, just come and just be able to get the items and things that they need right in the community. I'm a grower right in our community. So the food, the vegetables and things that I grow and that goes in my store comes right from the community that we're in. And that's super crucial in order to decrease the social determinants of health, because we're eating from our soil. And there is a large percentage of SNAP recipients in our community that helps not only sustain our store, but just themselves. And so it's been a great partnership just with Just Harvest and all our other partners, including the food bank, just to be able to provide these nutritious items for our community. And to see these things decreasing is it's heartbreaking, and I'm very unsure.
Thanks, Eb. Diane, I'm going to let you go next to talk a little bit about how SNAP impacts Dilamatos.
Thank you. Thanks, Anne. And thanks, everybody, for being here and for including me in this conversation. I own and operate a small grocery store in the Hazelwood neighborhood of Pittsburgh, which is a food desert community. We are well aware that over 80% of SNAP benefits are spent in the large suburban grocery stores and superstores. The reason for that is because this is where the best selection is. This is where the best deals are. This is where the best pricing, bulk buying, store branding, things like that. That's where people can find that. For the benefit for, the reason why these prices can be found in big suburban grocery stores is because of the economy of scale. So when you have a provider or when you have a grocery like Walmart controls a quarter of the food in the country. And so they can leverage this enormous economy of scale to keep their pricing and keep their selection, their pricing low and their selection broad. The challenge for a small grocery like myself is that there's no way that we can leverage that economy of scale. And so we struggle to hold prices reasonable. For the people who live in a community like Hazelwood, the challenge is that they have to travel in order to find those best prices and those wide selections. So traveling to get your groceries means that you tend to buy and eat shelf-stable items and frozen items. So what we provide as a small grocery in the community is we provide access to fresh and prepared, reasonably priced alternative food. And so the people who use our store come in and we sell a lot of produce. We sell a lot of fresh prepared food. We sell deli sandwiches. We sell bakery items that we make on site. Everything in our store is SNAP eligible, except for the hot sandwiches that we make once a week and the hot coffee that we have on for sale. And that's intentional. We know that we're in Hazelwood and we want to be accessible to the people in the community. During the pandemic, when there was extra SNAP available to many residents in the community, our SNAP sales made up about 25 to 30% of our overall sales. Now that those pandemic benefits have gone away and SNAP is slowly decreasing, we see that our SNAP sales are more like 15 to 20% of our sales totals. We will continue to stay open, and we will continue to provide not only for SNAP recipients, but for people who have limited income who also need reasonably priced groceries and want healthy and alternative options in their neighborhood. Thank you, Anne.
Thanks, Diane. So yeah, we have some time to chat. If there's anything in the Q&A, we could also answer Q&A questions. I don't know if there are any questions there or not.
Yeah, yeah, I was just taking a look at that as well. I'll tell you guys that thank you so much for the information as we wait just to double check, but there's so much there that obviously isn't, essential for, food security here in Pennsylvania. So it obviously is why we wanted to talk about it here and add it to our discussion and hopefully raise the level of engagement from people. One of the challenges that come up is that sometimes a lot of the people who are using these programs, sometimes they have so much going on, they're not always able to take the advocacy step. But advocacy is important. So whether you are somebody who directly uses any of these programs or you either work in the field or have a loved one who does, just know that communicating with elected officials about your thoughts on where we're going is essential to us hopefully making sure that these programs remain accessible. Look, food insecurity was something that my household as a kid struggled with. My mom was did her best. We had the old sort of welfare benefits and the food stamps back in the day. We benefited from programs that fed my sister and I in school and made sure that we didn't fall through the cracks, so to speak. But that investment allowed, sort of my mother to get the floor underneath us. And after, a bit of work on her end, we eventually no longer qualified for those services, but we needed them for that time. Without those services there, I'm not quite sure what would have been the outcome. But that's why, whether you're there for a short period, a little bit longer, that's why these programs are so important for us to support. So I definitely wanted to raise the issue here. It doesn't look like we have any questions, so I'm going to assume that's because you guys did such a great job explaining the issue here. Look, so thank you very much with it. What we wanted to do was for those of you who don't recall, my office got a whole bunch of Medicaid related questions about 6 weeks ago, 2 months ago. People were turning to us regarding some of the concerns that were coming out of the federal government and what it means to Pennsylvania. We've gone over a bunch of things from SNAP to disability supports and nursing homes and everything else. We just kind of touched the iceberg. There's still so much that's here. And I want to emphasize to you that the promised land for support for these programs really was not 3 months ago, right? There was still so much that we weren't able to fund, that there were still waiting lists, that there still were deserts, that there still were people not getting the supports that they needed. That was 3 months ago. So I get very concerned about what the next, 3 months to a year and a half, where some of those other changes will come into play, what that means. We still have a lot of things that we need to do to be sure to monitor this, be sure to try and keep people connected to the supports and services that they need. That requires a partnership from such great organizations who've joined us today, as well as throughout the whole last 4 weeks of Lunch and Learn. So, but it also requires your role too. So we've had hundreds of people who've turned in to view our programming over the last month. We need you also to be advocates, whether it's to me, which is fine, or to your state senate, that's fine, but to the federal side, to Congress and to the Senate. Make sure that you're raising your voices as to what you hope to see. And I know it sounds occasionally frustrating to do so, but the reality of it is if nobody talks to the elected officials, and nobody talks to elected officials. Now, and I want to apologize here too, because I may have slightly jumped onto 2 slides, Ann, that for whatever reason I missed you saying. But so let me come back to that because I was looking at the Q&A. So give us those two cool slides and let me and you talk about it for a moment. Hit me.
Yeah, so just wanted to just cover some key takeaways for folks who are getting SNAP benefits. First and foremost, always make sure DHS has your correct address and phone number. Read those notices that are mailed out to you as soon as you get them. Don't let them sit there and in your unopened mail pile. I know I have an unopened mail pile that I need to get to. So no shame in having one, but that one's got to get opened right away. And that, if you have a condition that makes it hard to work, have your doctor's office, counselor, or social worker complete a medical exemption form so that you don't risk losing your benefits later this year.
And how easy is this? Okay, is it something that like they're giving you a notice that is, clear? Are they giving you something that's buried in 4 pages of, unnecessary stuff? Is this a clear thing or no?
So if you are someone who's newly going to be subject to this time limit, you're going to get a 1-page questionnaire that's going to ask you to describe your situation. Like, do you have kids in the house that are age 13 or younger? Do you have a medical exemption? Are you experiencing domestic violence? There are all sorts of reasons that someone could be exempt from the work rules that your caseworker may not know about and that they need to know about so that you can keep your benefits. So that is probably the clearest communication that you will get from the county assistance office. If you're newly applying or up for your renewal, it'll likely be buried in the packet of information that you get when you're doing your recertification or when you're approved for benefits. The work requirement information will be buried in the packet. So you do kind of want to read those over. And if they don't make any sense to you, reach out for help, call Just Harvest. There's folks at the food bank. There's folks that, there are lots of places that are willing to help you go through that and help you figure that out.
What's your other slide?
Oh, and then our last slide, the next one is just some key takeaways for our elected officials. Ensuring adequate staffing for our department is going to be incredibly crucial because if the paperwork gets lost in the shuffle, that's because there's not enough staff to manage the paperwork. So having good, adequate staffing is going to help people keep their benefits. Also, it will help them administer benefits accurately, which will help reduce that, $220 million cost share to keep the SNAP program that I mentioned earlier. The amount that is based on how accurate our state administers benefits. And the only way to do it accurately is to have people to do the work, and supporting system improvements also to help streamlining and keeping those benefits accurate. And then, as Stephen mentioned, just realizing that our emergency food system and our retailers, all of them are going to be put under stress by these changes, and so supporting those programs that Stephen mentioned earlier is really important. Yes.
Help me understand the blue one there.
Yeah. Oh, Stephen, do you want to take this actually?
Sure, absolutely. So as I mentioned during my remarks, there are 2 programs at the state level that invest in the charitable food system. One is called the State Food Purchase Program. That is a cash grant that goes to lead agencies in each of the 67 counties to help with the purchase of food to be distributed to our neighbors in need. In this previous budget, that was funded at just a little over $20 million, but we are asking that be bumped up to $35 million to meet the need across the Commonwealth. The second is the Pennsylvania Agricultural Surplus System, which again is state dollars that help food banks and food pantries work with their local farmers, ranchers, and producers in their area to purchase items from them that then go on to, again, our neighbors in need. In the last budget, that was at about $5.5 million, but we are requesting $11 million for that, which, along with the continuation of the funding for the Senior Food Box Delivery Program, would bring us to a $47 million state food line item, which we, recognize is above where the governor's proposal came in at in February, and we're certainly grateful for the $8 million investment that he put into his proposal. But as we've discussed throughout this webinar, the charitable food system is already under immense stress, and now as a result of this law is going to see even more.
We're coming up right on the end, but that's what gets me where you say the charitable food system has to double. But is that even possible?
It's certainly going to be an all hands on deck approach. It's going to take, government leaders, philanthropic and foundation partners, and our neighbors that are in the community that have the ability to support organizations like ours, Just Harvest, and so many others. It's going to take all of us. But ultimately, we want our neighbors to know that if they're in need of food assistance, we are here, we are available, and to reach out to us if they need that assistance.
I think Stephen's being very nice. I'm not sure that this is at all possible, right? So at least not in a reasonable time period that doesn't end up pushing a lot of people out. But just a 10% cut to SNAP requires a charitable food system to double. Look, great points, and I want to thank you for coming back to these couple things. These are things, again, you could send to elected officials and say, look, here's what's coming, right? Here's things that concern. And by the way, the state has to finish its budget. There's no doubt about that, right? So that's something else we've seen some progress on. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks here, we'll have that done, knock on wood. But whether you're talking to state or federal, these are ways to talk and points to give to your elected officials. And nothing at all, to be honest, the best thing you could do is share your personal story. So anything like that is usually the best thing. Everybody, we are at our time. So again, I want to thank everybody for making it. We squeezed 4 people in. That's never easy in 30 minutes. So I want to thank Ian and Stephen and Ebony and Diane. Thank you very much for joining us. It is great to have you here. Thank you for your work. I wish, again, we were probably taking it on a different approach, but we had to talk about these types of issues now. See what the future brings. But don't forget, everybody, repdanmiller.com, especially in the next 2 weeks, we'll have all the programming done. You can see it on these community webinars where you can just click and you'll be able to get like anything that you missed. So it looks like several of them are already there. Yep, not bad. So we'll have the rest of it done shortly. Here, go down even further. Scroll down for a moment. Even further. Look at this. You even have some of my older programming. So there's even more topics. So if you're really bored, you have a chance to check out all the programming. I like the programming. I think we're good. But oh well, okay. So listen, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate you very much. Have a good day, and hopefully we'll have more positive news, especially on the state budget, coming soon. Thanks.